All right, everyone, we're going to get started. We're privileged once again to have Dr. Joseph Nicolosi here with us, and he's going to do some presenting and then have some time for interaction once again. So be jotting down questions, things that you want to know more about, understand as we go through the presentation today.
All right, I'd like to get a sense of who you are. Who am I dealing with? Am I dealing with therapists, interested individuals, people struggling with the issue, or give me an idea. Would any of you tell me who you are and why you're here? This way we have a sense of what the audience is.
I'm on staff.
Okay, you're on staff. You help people coming out of homosexuality? Okay, good. Who else?
Staff as well.
Staff as well. All right.
Interested in the subject.
Interested in the subject, okay.
We're volunteers for Living Waters Outpost.
Okay, great. Okay, so everyone's basically dealing. Anybody else want to tell me who you are?
Staff.
Staff, so this is basically staff. All right, this is going to be rather technical, but you take what you can from it and see how you might want to apply it with yourself. I'm going to just give you some basic information. We're going to be working with only 3 slides, and I hope you could see this. Let me go through this. I mentioned it last night, but it's important for us to understand. Gays will say to us, oh, I'm just gay. I was just born that way. That's it. But when you look closely at it, there are 4 phases to the development of a gay identity. The first one is the relationship with the mother, and that's in early infancy. The earlier model of reparative therapy did not include phase 1. The early model of reparative therapy started phase 2. We started with the relationship with the father, and that's how many of the ministries see it. The boy reaches out to the father. Father is distant, detached, uninvolved. The boy withdraws, and that is the beginning of homosexuality, or the beginning of the conflict that leads to the homosexual condition. We were consulting with Alan Shore. If anybody does a Google search on Alan Shore, the man is absolutely brilliant. And he is self-identified as a neurobiological psychoanalyst. In other words, he has a theory of psychoanalysis, and he looks at how it affects the brain, how psychological functions affect the neurobiology. And he has written some great textbooks. He is the only clinical psychologist to be invited by the American Psychological Association to give the annual plenary address. In other words, the American Psychological Association every year has a 5-day conference. They choose one speaker for the main presentation. And so Alan Shore was one of those. And Alan Shore we've been working with, and we go and we sit with him, and my entire staff asks him questions. He was very supportive. And I gave him the model of what we were doing, a reparative therapy 1, and I was kind of intimidated by him because he's not a man that's very warm and fuzzy. So I'm presenting to him, and I'm telling him about how the boy reaches out to leaves the mother and reaches out to the father, and he's doing this. He's going. So I keep going, I'm going. I figure I'm paying $200 an hour, so let me keep going. And he keeps going, no. So then I stop. He says, no, it goes back to the mother. In other words, he agreed everything with what we said, but he said it starts with the mother. The shutdown, in other words, when the boy encounters the father, and the father is distant, detached, unconnected, the boy dissociates. This is called the defense of dissociation, zoning out, tripping out. Have you ever looked at a person watching television during a commercial? They're zoned out. It's a primitive defense against being malattuned. And he said that the boy was conditioned to zone out, to disconnect from an uninvolved father, and it started with the mother. So let me take a minute what that means. Again, if you're a parent, we're not criticizing parents, we're just talking about the early factors that might contribute to this problem. The mother has a relationship with the son, or the child, but we're saying the son, where she wants to engage the boy. She wants to. So she intrudes herself upon the boy When the child is an infant, the mother looms in, and they've had video studies of this. The infant will look away, what they call eye diverting, moving away. But if the mother continues to intrude and try to stimulate and try to engage when the kid is wanting to shut down, the child will then dissociate and just zone out. And so the mother will be acting, but he's just numb. So that's the defense of dissociation. The other pattern is a mother who disengages. So the child is engaged with the mother, and then the mother suddenly disengages. And they have video recordings of this. You have a camera on the mother's face and you have a camera on the baby's face. And they pay these mothers to zone out at when they get a cue off camera. So she's playing with the baby, and the baby is playing, they're animated, everything, and then she gets a cue to shut down. So suddenly she stops. And the child keeps going. And then the child notices that the mother is shut down, and the child overactivates as if to re-engage her. But if the mother holds it, the child panics and feels there's a loss. Suddenly mommy's face looks different. There's a disconnect. And the panic, if the panic continues, then the child goes down to dissociation. So you wonder what kind of a mother would be volunteering for such a subject, for a study like this, you know? Because it's very uncomfortable to see. So a mother who over-engages or under-engages teaches the child neurobiologically conditions him to dissociate. If there's a malattunement, if there's some kind of disconnect, I just shut down. So the boy is conditioned neurobiologically to shut down. So he reaches out to the father, and we know typically the fathers are disengaged. So he reaches out to the father, and if the father is disengaged, then he disengages. And that might explain why one father can have a heterosexual son and another is a homosexual son. Because the heterosexual son with the same kind of father will engage the father, will get him to wake up. And very often, the brothers of our clients were problem sons. They were troublemakers, they were rebellious. It's as if it was the opposite, okay? So when you look at a family background, our clients tended to be passive, over-passive, good little boys, and their brothers tended to be the bad little boys. They're both reacting to extremes to the same family dynamic. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here, phase one. So in early infancy, phase one, relationship with the mother, there's an intense but insecure attachment to the mother, which many of our clients will tell you. I'm very close to my mother, but she drives me nuts if I talk to her for more than 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Because of the malattunement. Yes, dear, yes, dear, yes. A very small example. A guy I'm working with, he's talking to his mother, and he says, Mom, he lost about 5 pounds. He says, Mom, I'm on this great diet. I lost 5 pounds. Oh, that's wonderful. You should do my diet. It's like malattunement. And he goes, wait a minute, I'm just talking about I just shifted over. That's the kind of malattunement that drive our guys crazy. Now he moves on to the father, and we're talking about 1.5 to 3 years old, the gender identity phase that we talked about last night. And that is where he should make his masculine bonding. That's where he should find his gender identity. But typically the fathers are emotionally distant, attached. So he encounters the father, and the father is either hostile or disinterested, and hitting up against that, his defense is dissociation. So we're seeing both participating in that. Moving on to phase 3, peer relationships, 11 to 13, early adolescence. That's when peers become very, very important, and that's when consciously the men that you work with will tell you their most painful experiences with peers. Peer rejection, feeling cast out, feeling not part of the group, being made to feel inferior. that is where homosexuality kicks in. For the first time, your client will recall around 11 to 12 years old his first homosexual attraction. That's the reparative drive. I want to connect, but I don't know how to connect. So I connect in fantasy. I connect, and people say, why is it sexual? What makes it sexual? If they're cut off and they want to reconnect, how does it become a sexual problem? It's hard to understand because we don't have a full understanding of the nature of sexuality, but one of the functions of sexuality is to conquer, to gain, to master, to control. Sex is used as a way of improper, perverted sex is used as a way of controlling the other, grabbing, taking from the other. And we see this even in heterosexual relationships that are unhealthy. Phase 4 is the relationship with society, and that is from about 15, 16, 17 today, 15, 16, 17, the adoption of the gay identity. And the gay identity, as we've been saying, is different from homosexuality. Gay is a social, political identity. And so it seems to be like a shell, a rationale to justify and to cover up the homosexuality. Because if you know, if someone's dealing with homosexuality but he's identified as gay, it's going to be more difficult for him to look honestly at the causes of his homosexual condition. As I said last night, to be gay is anti-intellectual because you never ask why. To be gay is phenomenological. Phenomenological means only studying with the phenomenon, what is, not why it is. Why is a true intellectual inquiry. So you never ask why you're gay. The first problem with the mother was attachment. Attachment becomes a problem with the father of gender. Gender becomes a problem with the peers and it becomes sexual. And then society gives him the good news that he is a member of the gay community. And that happens around 15, 17 years old. As I said last night, about 20 years ago, the vast majority of our clients at the clinic were late 20s, early 30s. Today, almost 50% are teenagers. And why? Because they're being told that you're gay and this is it. So the gay identity is a simple answer for a complex psychological problem. Let's see if there are any questions about this so far. Yes?
What if a child, an infant, experiences phase 1, but not the other phases?
A normal outcome. In other words, let's say, for example, he has a mother who created the dissociation, but then he had a father who was engaging. So the father doesn't have to hit up against the boy's detachment. So there would be a bonding. So I would say that this would be a guy who would be heterosexual because he bonds with the father, because the father was able to push through the dissociation and engage with him. So he would be heterosexual in identity, but because of his detachment with his mother, he might have difficulty attaching to relationships with women. He might be the kind of guy who sits in front of the television and the wife says, "Hello, are you there?" kind of thing. So I would imagine that scenario. So the fact is you need both mother and father to create the homosexual condition. So you need the two, which is kind of what the early psychoanalysts were saying. But we never understood now on a neurobiological level why the early analysts were saying this. Question?
How about the girl who experiences phase 1?
Good question. She might become a lesbian. Yes, if that is severe enough, then a girl who has a malattuned mother could, as we talked about last night, that desire for attachment, that desire for consistent emotional attunement could get frustrated and suppressed, and then years later, maybe in adolescence, she meets a girlfriend and it's this intense, intimate, symbiotic relationship which is so deeply gratifying.
With the family, you know, how you talked about an older brother maybe being more rebellious. But with like the same mother, is that just difference in personality of the kid, or?
Well, I don't know. I mean, well, you could speculate that the mother did not do that with the other boy. Now you might consider the fact that maybe when the heterosexual boy was in his infancy, the mother was emotionally healthy. And so she was attuned and everything was fine. But then when the other boy is born, she goes through let's just say she goes through a marital crisis. All right? So she's playing with the baby, and then she becomes distracted about her marriage, frustrated or depressed or something. So she cuts that out and she starts preoccupying herself with her marriage or an illness or some other crisis in her life. And then she goes back to so her on and off, back and forth, may become a problem during that period of time with that child, but not with another. This is one of the characteristics that we find with our clients. They're dealing with homosexuality, but there's this background feeling that I am out of control in relationships. I am always looking to others. This is part of the homosexual condition. I'm always looking to others to tell me what's to be expected. I'm always looking for clues about where I stand. There's not that solid sense of, I know what I want in this relationship. How many times do I tell my clients, what do you want from this relationship? And they don't even think about that as a problem. They're always trying to figure out what the other person wants from them and how to get around that. Either rebelling or passive aggressive or whatever. So the on again, off again connection has nothing to do with what the child does. So the child is taught whatever you do has no effect on others early on. That's a sidebar to the consequence of this situation. Yes?
Is this increasing the incidence of homosexuality? And secondly, what is the impact of a single parent on this?
Well, not necessarily. Again, the dissolution of the family does not necessarily mean there'll be more homosexuality. What's important is that there's a father figure for the boy. First of all, from what we're saying, that the mother is emotionally stable. You have to understand that's why you need a father. You know, a Christian model of the family is the baby is in the center, and then around the baby is the mother, and then around the mother is the father, and he takes care of reality. He takes care of the days, he brings in the money, he provides the emotional and financial security so that the mother could be focused on the baby. Now with single mothers, there's no buffer for the woman between the baby and reality. She doesn't have a man that's going to help her out, so she's under a lot more stress. And you can imagine that these mothers are not going to be as consistently attuned to the infant because they're dealing with this other stuff, like paying the rent, or their boyfriend just walked out, or whatever. So there would be a correlation in that sense. But again, you need a consistent father, a father figure. Yes?
So in the process of childhood development, baby bonds with mom, and then baby has to separate out from mom and attach to dad. If baby's bond with mom is insecure, or if there's a significant breakdown, what is baby separating out from in that process? I mean, it never was. Did he bond with an idea of?
No, there was some early bonding. There was some early infant bonding. It's not that there's no relationship. There is some early infant bonding. The separation individuation phase, which by the way happens at the same time as gender identity phase. This is important for us to understand. The gender identity phase for the boy, which is to say his awareness of being a boy, happens at the same time of separation individuation from the mother. So it's his maleness and mommy's femaleness, the difference between that helps me become my own person. But if there's an over-enmeshment, if there's a blurring of boundaries, if I'm not sure where mommy ends and I begin, then my sense of masculinity as distinct from her is blurred. It's not clean. That's where you need the father to come in and slice it and say, you're on this side with me. And the kid gets that objectivity. Now I can see mommy as a woman and she's different from me. That sets up, now that's very interesting because we said for the homosexual, men are objects of curiosity. For the heterosexual man, women are mysteries and objects of curiosity. Because when he disidentifies with the woman, now she is other than him. And that's going to set up a curiosity. Women are interesting. What is it about women? See, because now he wants to go back. So if you look at it as a swing, he moves away from the feminine in order for him to be able to return to the feminine as a man. The homosexual never did that completely. Yes?
A pregnant mother who didn't know the identity or sex of her child before he was born. What if she said things like, if he's a boy, I'm not going to bring him home from the hospital?
Very serious, very serious. So if a mother who says, if the baby is born a boy, I'm not going to take him home, well, that's a very serious. Not only is that serious, I mean, she's like, there's something really wrong with her. You know what I mean? I mean, we're not just talking about preference here, you know? Something really wrong. Okay, that's just a question.
Is there some study with identical twins? And what did they find?
Oh yeah, well that was another insane report. They did a study of, now get this, I'll give you the results and let's see if you can figure this out. They did a big study soon after the Simon LeVay study. I think it was Bailey and a few others. Bailey, I don't remember exactly. Pillard and Bailey, okay. Bailey, gay activist, okay, but of course it's never reported. Okay, he does a study of identical twins. And he finds that identical twins, if one is homosexual, then it's about 50% likely that the other will be homosexual. Therefore, it's biological, or at least there's indication of biology. What's wrong with that conclusion? Right?
Just because it is doesn't mean it has any correlation.
Yeah, well, not only that, but they're identical. So if they're identical, which means they have the same biological genetic foundation. So why is it 50%? It should be 100%, right? Nobody noticed, right? Okay. Now, a little interesting little passage there. So, of course, we know that there's influence with the parents. Okay. A small study showed that if you have identical twins, the one that's named after the father is the heterosexual. So what does that tell you? Hey, this is my boy. This is my son. Another study with fraternal twins, which means they share some of the same genetic background, but not completely. In fraternal twins, one is always more robust and larger, and one is more small and frail. Statistically, the small and frail is more likely to be homosexual. What does that tell you? Because the mother is going to be more solicitous and protective, and the other boy, you go with daddy, but I'll take care of this little one. And we see the family dynamic laid out just by the biological evidence here. What's that? Yeah, well, there you have it. Yeah, exactly. Good. Yes, in the back.
Do you think there'd be any correlation between having a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad in the earlier years?
Again, it's the bonding. It's the relation. You could have a father that's staying at home. In fact, when I did the radio show to promote this conference, someone said, well, my son is acting like a sissy, but dad stays home. He doesn't work. I go to work. But then I thought, well, what's the relationship? What kind of a father is it? How is the father modeling masculinity? What's the relationship with the son? So in and of itself, that wouldn't tell me anything. The bonding is the most important thing. That's the important thing. Even if the father is effeminate, if the boy bonds with the father, because a boy doesn't, a very young boy doesn't see a feminine father. He sees father. And that's good enough for him. I mean, unless the father's wearing a dress or something. I mean, that's going to be a giveaway, you know what I mean? Yes?
But the inconsistent attention to the child, that's got to be big in chemical dependency.
Absolutely right. Chemical dependency, that's a factor.
They're there,
They're there or they're not. And we see that many of our clients, their fathers were dealing with alcohol or other kinds of abuses, drug abuse. And they're going to zone in or zone out. Or even the mother, of course. All right, so let's move on. Yes?
You outlined two ways it goes in phase one, either
over-connection or under-connection on the part of the mother. And with the kid, the baby learns to dissociate because of that.
Right.
Is it intrusive?
Yeah.
Okay, I found that one interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Why is the mother doing that, and what real effect does it have on the baby?
Well, because the mother is intruding too much. The mother is not attuned to the baby who may be on a down cycle. So she is oblivious to the fact that this kid needs to rest, maybe wants to fall asleep, wants to be on the down cycle. She wants to have fun. It's like a little baby playing with a puppy. I want to play with the puppy. I just stimulate him. So we don't want to say these mothers are narcissistic, but we will say that they have a narcissistic relationship with the infant. In other words, they're using the infant for their needs. The mother has a need for stimulation, and now she's going to stimulate the baby for her own gratification, oblivious to the fact that he's not in the mood. So the boy is going to try to fend that off, but if you push through it, he will just dissociate. That's the pattern. Yeah.